Welcome to Stop Guessing, Start Testing, a podcast to help your online business become more profitable through better decisions. Learn how to collect clues from tiny tests so you can grow without relying on luck. I'm your host, Sue McLachlan. Let's go. We're currently in that weird kind of liminal space between Christmas and New Year's. Maybe you are in a chocolate and food coma still and checking out from the world in this week and perhaps binging this after New Year's. Or maybe this time between Christmas and New Year's has got your brain spinning. The ideas are already flowing. You know, all of your life was like, get till Christmas or get till the end of the year, and then I am going to smash out 2026. But what if that smash out 2026, that brain spinning with ideas, is leaving you in a bit of a spiral? If you're thinking, oh my gosh, what should I launch? What am I going to do to make 2026 different or more successful? Should I try something new? All the things, all of those decisions can leave you in a bit of a decision paralysis, getting stuck. And the reason that happens is because even though maybe you're thinking, oh, well, I've just got to make one choice or one decision, it is never one decision, because all of these decisions that you're making in your business leave you in a bit of a Babushka Doll situation. Let's just say that you want to create a new product. Well, first, you've got to decide what product to create. What is that solving? Who wants this? What do they need? What are you going to put in it? What format is it going to be? All of the questions that may come up around the product itself. Then you got to decide how much you're going to charge for it. What sort of pricing? Is it annual? Is it monthly? Is it one time? Are you going to do payment plans? All the questions around pricing. Am I charging too much, too little? All the things. And of course, you've got to figure out, well, how am I going to launch it? Is this going to be evergreen? Is it going to be a live launch? Am I just going to send out some emails? Am I going to make a big deal? And what is the messaging strategy that I'm going to use? How am I going to explain this new thing to my audience? And how are you going to get audience, potential customers, to even see it? That one little 2026 decision suddenly has so much weight, all the weight that you probably never even considered. And that is what can lead you to the very unfun place of decision paralysis. Now, it's easy to think that the paralysis is coming from not knowing what to do or maybe having too many options. But the paralysis can come from not just having that babushka doll situation, but thinking that there is one right answer, that you've somehow got to get the right answer, make the right choice, which by default means that every other choice is somehow wrong. And the feeling of doing something wrong is horrible. It can feel like gambling. You are just trying to get lucky, and you worry that if you maybe pick the wrong price or the wrong launch strategy or the wrong type of product, well, it is going to make the entire house of cards fall over. Or you can worry that you've just wasted a heap of time when you didn't need to. Well, in this episode, I am going to share with you how you can stop guessing, aka gambling and hoping that you're going to get lucky, and start eliminating, such as using our business as a Guess Who board. Now, if you heard my previous episode where I talked about Guess Who, you are going through a series of elimination questions to try and get to the one face that your opponent has. And for you, that one face is that answer. It's going to be different every time for every person and every situation. So part of that getting clearer, getting in a safer place can be starting with eliminating the options. Get rid of the things that aren't an option that you maybe have as a consideration, but once you think about constraints and things that may be only specific to you, well, you can start wiping options off the board. Now, if you are thinking about a new product, some of the constraints that you might have is time. How much time do you have between now and whenever it is that you want to launch this new thing? How much time have you already put in it? How much time do you need to create this new product? Because If you need a result in a week, well, you can cross off anything that is going to take you 3 months to build, like a super complex funnel or an SEO strategy to drive audience. When you got limited time, you're going to get scrappy. So get rid of any of the things that are going to take a lot of time. Money is another common constraint. If you do not have any budget or very limited budget, well, you can take away options that are going to require ads or marketing spend or getting any kind of assistance, people to build things for you, potentially getting business coaching, strategy, or advice. All of that is going to be off the table. So, if you're hoping to talk to someone to help narrow your options and get advice, but you don't have any money, well, you're going to have to rethink that. Something that's really important but not often talked about when you're looking at eliminating options is energy and vibe. Now, what I mean by that is that if you really hate doing something like dancing on TikTok reels, or if you really hate writing emails, you don't like written kind of content, or you are allergic to Instagram like I am, or video is something that you just do not want to do. If you do not want to put yourself on video, well, forcing yourself to run a webinar launch is probably not going to work as well as something that you do feel strong at. And B, it's going to cause you to procrastinate, because if the energy is off, you're not going to want to do it, which is then going to clash as well with that time constraint, if that's something that is an issue. So look at anything from an energy perspective or a vibe perspective that is a constraint to get rid of that. And also think about audience. What is the best way to connect with your audience? Do you even have an audience? Do you need to spend some time growing an audience before launching something? Do you have data on what has worked in the past? For example, do you have a corporate audience, people who are working in corporate? And are you making the assumption that LinkedIn is the best place to reach them just because that seems like an obvious thing? Or have you actually tested that? Have you compared different platforms and seen where you get the most response? All of these things can be constraints that will help you eliminate some of the options. So it's less, oh my God, there's so many choices, and more, okay, I've got a few choices. Sometimes you might get lucky and get straight to the answer. But if you don't, and if you're still going, what am I going to do? Well, then you can weigh up and do a bit of a pros and cons on what is left. For example, if you are trying to decide whether your new program is going to be a course or a membership or a coaching program, well, do some pros and cons. If doing something for a shorter period of time where it has like a fixed result where you can put a burst of energy in and then not have any commitment to it, then a course may be a better option, because memberships can be easier to get set up and get started. You may be able to do that really quickly. I just actually got a membership site set up for a client in December in a week, so totally possible. But that is also creating a lot more ongoing work, and that has a commitment. So pros and cons. What is a pro for you? Now, that ongoing commitment and less work up front may be a pro for one person, and it may be a con for someone else. So you've got to come at it from the perspective of what works for you. So go through all the options that you have left when you are trying to make the decision, and do that pros and cons list. And remember, you're not looking for the perfect option. You're going to look for the trade-offs. Which things of the pros and cons have the biggest impact for you? Like option A might be faster, but it might take a whole lot more work. Option B sounds like a better option, but you don't have enough money to pull it off. So look at those pros and cons and what you would be willing to live with, because sometimes you might find a con is a deal breaker. So that allows you to eliminate something else off your list. Now, a perspective that can help you when you are making decisions, and sometimes it can help the spiral more than anything. If you're still feeling scared about picking the right option, ask yourself, what is the absolute worst thing that happens if I get this wrong? I often think we're not doing brain surgery here. We are selling digital products. And yes, I know that it is devastating when something doesn't work. I have 100% had those moments. I remember my very first membership site launch, and I had 3 people sign up, and I spent days in bed afterwards crying. Now, that's probably because I put so much weight on it, and I was pretty much gambling on a theory that it would sell well because it was Black Friday. In fact, that theory was not well because I didn't have an audience, so I had incredibly expensive ad costs in all that noise and competition. So that was where that was a guess, and that guess didn't work. But when I looked at the worst case scenario, the actual worst case scenario was it didn't work. And what it did do is give me information so I could try again and use a different strategy. I got data from that. And that's where you pick this worst case scenario and think, what could I learn from that if that happened? And it just helps flip your perspective because, for the most part, there isn't a disaster that is going to come. There's no like worst case scenario that will mean the end of your business, that you need to shut everything down, that you've got to go back to your job or whatever it is. It just gives you data so that you can do something again later. Maybe if it doesn't work and you don't get as many sales as you want, you need to do something a little bit quicker. But realizing that this isn't some kind of pass fail, your business isn't going to die if you make the wrong decision, can take a whole lot of the pressure off that decision. And remember as well that you can't steer a parked car. You have to have that car in motion in order to steer it. Because if you try and turn the steering wheel on a parked car, it is so heavy and it is so hard. And sometimes you just need to put something in motion to then be able to steer it, even if that first steer is in the wrong direction. You've got to get motion to be able to get things on track. So the worst case scenario is it may not work. You may not sell anything, you may not meet your goals. Whatever the case is, just know that doing something like actually going ahead with one of your choices is the thing that's going to put it in motion so that you can get onto the track that you want. I just wanted to share an example as well of how I handled a recent decision situation by going through this elimination process and weighing up pros and cons. It's a little bit meta because it's actually a decision process that I went through that has led to this very podcast. Right now, I am launching the 2026 experiment. It is a brand new type of digital product. I've never done anything like this before. And it comes after a year of feeling a little bit funky, not really launching anything new. Unfortunately, I've, not been so consistent with social media or maybe at all. I haven't really been emailing recently. So it's not coming into it with a particularly strong situation. And as well, I took on some work in December, which meant that I hadn't spent as much time on promoting this as I wanted to. And coming up to the last week of the month, I was like, I have not met my goals. Now, it certainly wasn't something that I was stressing about. I actually don't have a worst case scenario for this because my entire year is going to be an experiment. Everything that I do will be to create data, to learn more, to find clues. And so, the worst case scenario for me is that I don't get as much data as I want. But when I looked at what was happening, I realized that I had some pretty significant constraints. I wanted to add something to the launch strategy because the main thing that I was doing was sending emails to a sales page, which was pretty hurriedly thrown together. And the emails, whilst they've been really great, have been taking me a really long time to write because I've been taking time to craft them, to make sure that it is in my voice, to look for different hooks. And when I looked at how much time I had available for the rest of the year, which is the early access launch period, and factored into that Christmas, that I'm not going to be able to be working as much as I want to. I've got some personal commitments. I'm moving country at the end of the month again as a digital nomad. Like, all of those things led to me not having a heap of time. And when I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted to from email, I still have the feeling that that last urgency is going to pump things up. But just in case it didn't, I wanted to add something extra in. But with all those constraints, with my YouTube channel basically being a video blog and really relying on search traffic, I don't tend to get a heap of response immediately to videos that I put up. So I was like, well, I don't know if video is going to be the best choice. Not to mention, I've been struggling with my old friend video anxiety lately. But I just had this feeling that there was some kind of disconnect between what I was writing, what was on the sales page, and what was in my emails, and what I am saying. Like when I tell people about the 2026 experiment, it feels different. It feels like people can understand my passion more, understand where I'm coming from with it, and it feels a little bit easier to get the message across. So I thought about doing a webinar. Webinars are something that I'm generally pretty strong at, but again, that time constraint and also the video anxiety constraint. Plus, it being the week between Christmas and New Year, I was a little bit nervous about running a webinar. I mean, hey, maybe it will be something that I can do one year and gather some data about how effective that is compared to running a webinar in a different week, because I also imagine while a lot of people wouldn't be able to attend because they're on holiday with families, etc., there's probably a lot less competition because pretty much no one is running a webinar in this week. So I decided, though, that was a little bit too risky of an experiment. And what I ended up doing was brain dumping all of this. I am a verbal processor, so if you're a verbal processor too, this may help you. But I pretty much brain dumped all of these constraints, the time issues, that my email list not being quite as engaged because I haven't been emailing as regularly until the end of November. So I dumped all of that into ChatGPT. I am pretty sure I would have said something about audio and speaking and how when I talk to people that the message comes across a lot clearer. And ChatGPT took all of that brain dump, all of that information, and suggested an audio series, which I was like, yes, that is so perfect. An audio series is easy to pull together. I love any kind of audio, being someone who's got a background in radio broadcasting, voiceover, etc. And also, it doesn't need a heap of prep work. I've already got microphones. I know how to record and edit, throw it up on a podcast, no problem. I was like, yes, all right, I'm going to do that. But then I sat on that idea, and I'm really glad that I did, because that was my first kind of jump at it. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to go to the effort of doing that and put energy into that instead of doing emails, I would really love for it to be able to sell not just in this week between Christmas and New Year and this early access, but I would love for it to be more of an ongoing access, because the 2026 experiment is going to be on sale for the whole year. People can join whenever they want. It's just if they join earlier in the year, they'll get more of that in the moment part of the decision making. So after sitting on it, I pondered about turning it into a bit more of a audio series, possibly leading into a podcast, because when I started looking at ideas for episodes and what I wanted to include in the audio series, I quickly realized that there is so much that I could talk about, and so much that I want to talk about as well. And also, I feel like when people are talking about data and testing and experimentation, often it comes from more of a, no offense to nerdy people, but more of a nerdy spreadsheety land. And as a creative person, that is pretty hard to wrap your head around. And I know a lot of people in my world are also creative types and struggle with that. So I wondered whether creating a podcast ongoing, I'm just going to be starting with this audio series, could be, a thing that I do into 2026. But I did the tiny test first. I am just going to do the audio series and I'm going to see, does it work? I'm going to test that. It's going to be one of the experiments in my experiment process. But I got to that place by going through that series of elimination, looking at pros and cons, looking at constraints, which then led me to the option. Is it the right option? Would a webinar have worked better? I don't know. I had to pick the option that I thought had the most pros. Because, at the end of the day, you can, if things are similar and you're not sure what to do, just pick one of them. Because again, what's the worst case scenario if you just pick one of them? You could try the other one at a later time if it came down to it. So, doing that and going through that process was super valuable. It's given me another experiment that I'm going to put into the 2026 experiment product. And if you are joining me, you will get all of the answers and all of my learnings and test results from doing that. But for today, I would love to leave you with a tiny test. If you are in decision paralysis, and you can do this multiple times if there are multiple decisions, but I just want you to take one decision that you are stuck on right now. Write that decision down and write down all of the options that are available to you. Then I want you to consider your constraints. Now, this is going to be so different depending on what the decision is, your business, etc. But some examples is time a constraint? How much time do you have to work on this? How much time do you have to prep a launch or put a funnel into place? If anything is going to be affected by time, well, scribble that off, scribble that option off if you are not going to be able to make it happen because time is your constraint. Then have a look at energy. Is there something that sounds good that someone else has said is, been really successful for them, but the thought of doing it makes you want to put bamboo shoots under your nails because you're like, no, that's horrible. Scratch that off. It doesn't matter if it's been hugely successful. If you don't enjoy it, it's probably not going to work as well. Also, if there is something like my example with, the video anxiety that is plaguing this season of my world, if video is an issue or writing or audio or any of those other things that could be impacted, scratch that off your option list. Also look at resources. What budget do you have? Anything that requires money, if you don't have a budget, scratch it off. Also think of assets in terms of resources. Do you have an email list? Do you have an audience? Which of your platforms is the strongest? What things would you be able to do? Like what assets do you have in your business already that you can bring to the table? And sometimes you can even think of assets as strengths. Like what are the things that you're really good at that feel easiest? If there's things that don't feel easy, scratch them off. And, there's heaps of other constraints that you can consider, but think about what are your constraints right now to get rid of some of your options. Now, you're unlikely, unless you get really lucky, to end up with just one answer through going through elimination. But that means that you have got a short list. So you can go and do that pros and cons. And once you get to that point, it feels way less paralysis-y anyway. And then if it comes down to it after you do the pros and cons, just pick the thing that feels the lightest or the easiest to execute and just choose that as your first test. That is absolutely no harm in doing that once you've got through a series of elimination and you're left with a this or that, because until you test something, until you get your business car moving, you won't know whether that was the right option. So just pick it, make that your first test. And just remember, this is something that I have been saying to my clients for years. Your first launch is just your first launch. That's it. It's just the first time you do it. If you are running a business that is sustainable, that you're in it for the long term, you are most likely going to launch again and again and again. And if the launch doesn't work, it's going to give you an opportunity to gather data so that the next time you launch, you will be able to tweak and change things and do them differently. So stop putting so much pressure on yourself to get it right and just do the thing to get in motion and get moving, and then tweak and change once you have got clues, once you've got information, and once you have got data. Because coming at it from that place, realizing that there is no failure, that there is only data collection, can help you feel much more confident in picking one of those choices from your shortlist after you have eliminated the options, because there will always be another time to test If you've enjoyed this episode and it's got you thinking, yeah, I'm done guessing, I want to start testing, then you are going to love the 2026 experiment. That is where I'm taking this whole mindset into real life for a full year of business experiments on my own digital product business. You can watch what I try, ask questions about changes or pivots I make, see the clues that I'm paying attention to, and get honest, transparent info on what I find is working right now. We are kicking off on January 1st, and until then, you can get in with early access pricing, saving you 50% on the entire year. It is just $99 for an entire year of access and all the debriefs. Only until midnight New Year's Eve. So come and join in before the price goes up at theunicornadvisory.com/2026. Again,